Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Mama Margaret Kenyatta, our First Lady, Your Excellency Ambassadors and High Commissioners, my fellow leaders present here from the national and county level, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, abantu bami into mboyamore naende. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Asanteni sana. Mheshimiwa Rais, wakati uliamua ya kwamba sherehe za kitaifa baadhi yao itafanywa katika makaunti, ilikuwa ni uamuzi wa busara. Ndio sababu leo tunaandika historia hapa Gusii Stadium kwamba sherehe ya kitaifa ya kwanza tangu tupate uhuru wa Kenya inafanyika tarehe hii hapa Gusii, hapa Gusii Stadium. And I want to say, Your Excellency, we've come here to celebrate our Mashujaas, the heroes and heroines of our nation. Our founding fathers, the men and women who through determination, hard work, sweat and blood reclaimed our nation from the hands of colonialists and made us a free people. To them, we owe a debt of gratitude, and that is why we celebrate them on this Mashujaa Day. Your Excellency, there are millions of ordinary Kenyans in our villages, in towns and cities, who wake up early and sleep late in offices, in factories, in farms, and in all other places, working hard for our nation diligently, with commitment, with determination, with passion, and with integrity to make meaning of our independence and to continue the journey of making our nation free. To them too, ladies and gentlemen, we celebrate them as our Mashujaas because of what they do on a daily basis. And Your Excellency, because it is a national day, I do not wish to say more. My friend, the former Prime Minister, has told us about the reggae, which is fine, but I guess we will have a robust national conversation that will bring everybody on board. With those few remarks, Your Excellency, it's now my duty and pleasure to request, ladies and gentlemen, for us to be upstanding so that we can ask His Excellency the President to make his national address. Your Excellency, sir.
Asante, William. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you very much. Fellow Kenyans, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by wishing each and every one of you a happy Mashujaa Day. And let me also, at the very onset, thank you, the Gusii, for the warm reception that we have received here in Gusii. To celebrate the cultural diversity of Kenya and to strengthen our nationhood, I made the decision to hold our national celebrations in the counties on a rotational basis. Today, Gusii joins the counties of Nakuru, Nyeri, Machakos, Meru, Kakamega, Narok, and Mombasa in having played host to a national celebration. And indeed, in the near future, we shall announce where next year's Madaraka Day will be hosted. So, fellow Kenyans, we gather here to celebrate 68 years of history and heroism as a country. We are well aware, indeed, as the former Prime Minister mentioned, that the Gusii community is also not short of heroes. In their senior ranks, there are those that have been mentioned by the Prime Minister. But you will also encounter senior chiefs, Angwenyi Geshana, Osongo Agwenyi, Oga Agwenyi, Zakaria Agwenyi, Musa Nyandusi, and many others. The makers of the Kenyan nation at independence also tapped into the abilities of your sons and daughters, heralding the birth of a strong and vibrant nation whose story cannot be complete without the mention of Lawrence Sagini, James Nyamwea, Zachary Onyonka, amongst others. And thereafter, following in the steps of the independence Gusii heroes, many others heeded the call to serve the public arena, with some rising to high echelons of public service as high-standing cabinet ministers, formidable legislators, influential judicial figures, amongst them being George Museti Anyona, Simeon Nyachai, Justice Nyarangi, just to mention but a few. So, ladies and gentlemen, on this day in 1952, a state of emergency was declared in Kenya by the British. They arrested over 200 of our leaders, including the Kapenguria Six, and indeed started one of the darkest chapters in the history of our nation. The atrocities visited upon thousands of our people during the emergency period can never be described by any account of history. Even the secret histories of the hanged in detention camps cannot capture the pain of what was later called the Dirty War between the British and our liberation heroes. Fathers were taken away from their families never to return, while those who did limped back home, some having been castrated and permanently robbed of the joy of ever being a parent. Mothers were maimed by marauding soldiers never to recover, and innocent children were forcefully conscripted into a war and turned against their own. The darkness of this dirty war and its imprint on the psyche of our nation will remain alive in our memories forever. However, the founding father of our nation, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, advised us that for our country to heal and move forward, we must forgive, but we can never forget. This advice to forgive and not to forget was not a call to begrudge the perpetrators of the darkest part of our history. It was a call to remind our children about our past every Mashujaa Day, and to do it recognizing that liberation is a process. The more we ponder our history in its truest form, the more liberated we become. But those who whitewash and dodge their history become victims of its ugly parts. Fellow Kenyans, this day, the 20th of October, was set aside by our forefathers because there is no country without a history, and there is no history without heroes. The day was also set aside to remind us that history is not just about the past. Our history is also a torch that blazes a trail into the future as well. And that is why I invite you today to reflect with me on the heroes and heroines that defined our nationhood. Although we speak of October 1952 as the hallmark date in the history of our heroes, tales of heroism in Kenya date back to the 19th century, well over 100 years ago. And this is testament to the fact that our national pride is not a recent affair. It is something ingrained in our consciousness as a people. For instance, Chief Wayaki Wahinga led a resistance movement of the Agikuyu against the leadership of the British administration towards the end of the 19th century. His main complaint was that the colonizers were excessive in their demand for livestock and labor from his people. And during one of the disagreements, he is said to have burnt down a British establishment in his jurisdiction in 1890. 2 years later, in 1892, Wayaki Wahinga was arrested and buried alive at Manyani Maximum Prison in Taita Taveta. He died a hero. And today, I cannot be more proud than I was last week when in the same venue, Manyani, I introduced the future heroes of our nation, a group of 800 young men and women engaged in groundbreaking innovations for the future of our country. Another hero from this era was Mukile Wanameme, leader of the Bukusu resistance of 1895, a brave soldier and a skilled military man. Wanameme is said to have beaten the British soldiers in his first battle against them at Chitemba Hills near Webuye. He died a hero. And not all our 19th century heroes were men. There was a Giriama widow by the name of Mekatilili Wamenza, who distinguished herself as one of the foremost warriors of her time. Born in 1840, she led the Giriama resistance against the British Empire between 1912 and 1915, a grievance against the British administration using forced Giriama labor that undignified her people. She was arrested twice, put in colonial maximum prisons, and in both instances escaped. The first, as we heard earlier, actually being here in Gusii, where she walked after escaping 800 kilometers back home. Her second escape was from Kismayo in present-day Somalia, and she did escape from there and went back to Kilifi to continue the Giriama resistance. Such spirit of resilience and constant comebacks is what we have banked in our historical records as heroism. A new generation of liberation leaders, inspired by these 19th century heroes, emerged from the 1920s. They included, amongst others, Jomo Kenyatta, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Harry Thuku, Achieng' Oneko, Daniel Arap Moi, Masinde Muliro, amongst others. This generation was more enlightened in Western tactics and began to use pen and paper to advance the cause of the African people. This is the generation that laid the foundation stone for our modern nation state, and that is why we call them the founding fathers of this nation. In the late 1940s, a new generation who had fought side by side with British soldiers during the Second World War emerged. This generation was heroic on many accounts. They fought the Mau Mau War against the British Empire and won. And thereafter, together with the founding fathers, they negotiated and drafted our constituting instruments for the birth of a new nation, and fundamentally, they started the journey of founding our nationhood from scratch. But what enduring lessons can we highlight as a nation from the examples of these ordinary men and women who became heroes? What must we teach our children every Mashujaa day from the acts of these heroes? These liberation heroes were people who sacrificed themselves for an ideal bigger than themselves. These heroes, some of them buried in unmarked graves, understood that there is no weapon more lethal than the will of a free people. They sacrificed for this high ideal, negotiated when they had to, but they never surrendered. Their resolve remained unbroken and unbowed. Some historians have argued that these heroes were extraordinary people, but nothing can be further from the truth. These veterans were ordinary people who became extraordinary because of the choices they made. They did not start out as heroes who did big things. Their heroism was only revealed as they stubbornly confronted obstacles that stood in their path to freedom. They only became heroes moment by moment as the liberation of our country from the shackles of colonialism unfolded. So, fellow Kenyans, you may ask why I just said that creating our nationhood is a journey started by our founding fathers, but one that is yet to be completed. I say so, fellow Kenyans, because nationhood is not an event. It is a process. When our founding fathers emerged from the liberation war with fresh wounds, bloodied faces, years of incarceration, they had only one desire. They had vanquished their enemy and brought freedom. But the task of bringing 42 nations into a single nation state was still daunting. They knew that this would be a journey. They knew that summoning the consciousness of 42 nations into a singular purpose under the nation state would take constant negotiations and renegotiations. And borrowing from their own historical experiences, the process of constantly reviewing our nationhood would only happen through the unremitting search for a constitutional consensus. This position was strongly advocated by another group of our heroes known as the Constitutionalists. Apart from being the architects of our new state and the engineers of our new economic order, they pushed for the practice of constantly building a constitutional consensus. To them, constitution making was not a rigid endpoint. It was a constantly moving target that requires continuous consensus. More so, because they saw constitution making as being a process first and then an act after. While the act of constitution making is an end state in itself, the process is a constant negotiation and renegotiation of nationhood. Guided by this philosophy of constitutional consensus, these heroes went through as many as 4 constitutions before landing on a workable consensus. And their mantra in this search was best captured by the former Vice President, Joseph Murumbi, when he said, and I quote, "There is nothing wrong with Kenya that cannot be fixed by what is right with Kenya," end of quote. If the Littleton Constitution of 1954 was wrong, it was made right by the Lennox-Boyd Constitution of 1958. When this constitution outlived its consensus, the Ian MacLeod Constitution of 1960 kicked in, and the search for a common ground continued until the Independence Constitution was adopted. But even then, this constitution was adopted as a ceasefire document to facilitate independence. After independence, the Lancaster Consensus was replaced by a new consensus, and the cycle of constantly negotiating our nationhood continued. So, ladies and gentlemen, when I cautioned against constitutional rigidity in my Madaraka Day address this year, this is exactly what I meant. Our founding fathers and our constitutional heroes did not intend our constitutional order to enslave us. They constructed it to serve us. And when it ceased to serve us, we are meant to borrow from the examples of our founding fathers and rethink it. More so, if the national question of the day requires a constitutional settlement. Fellow Kenyans, our country is staring at a constitutional moment. And the national question goes back to the advent of our multi-party system. For indeed, it was after the reintroduction of political pluralism in 1992 that negative politics began to dominate our national arena. The question at hand, and one requiring a constitutional consensus is therefore, how do we as a people, as a nation, resolve the winner-take-all situation within a context of competitive politics as required by democratic practice? And how do we ensure we fulfill our democratic credentials without tearing apart the diversity of our nation? The question of us versus them must come to an end, fellow Kenyans. And as we exercise our democratic rights, it must never again be at the expense of our diversity. The cardinal principle must always be our unity in diversity. Yes, the 2010 Constitution gave us some remedies, but did it resolve or entrench the zero-sum game in which the winner takes all and the loser goes home with nothing? Are we still in this zero-sum constitutional dispensation that created conflict since the advent of multi-party politics in 1992? And how do we expect as a people to resolve this problem using elections instead of constitutional change? It would indeed, fellow Kenyans, be a tragedy if come subsequent elections we have not resolved this dilemma. And that is why I urge the country to ponder a constitutional consensus around a three-pronged national question. On the one part, the question is political inclusion. Instead of a zero-sum constitutional equation, can we adopt a positive-sum equation? Can we adopt a constitutional arrangement that can take care of our diversity as a people? And on this, fellow Kenyans, we should not give my suggestion the parochial interpretation of creating positions for individuals. I am only urging for a constitutional consensus that accommodates all communities in an election. A consensus that makes it possible for any Kenyan to lead this country working hand in hand with his or her brothers and sisters from across the nation. The second part of the national question at hand is about equity in the distribution of opportunities and resources. Our political practice, unfortunately, has been such that resources and opportunity go to those occupying positions of authority. And that is why elections are so divisive and emotive. But it is possible for us to entrench the principles of equity in the distribution of resources and opportunities in the Constitution. This way, it is the Constitution, not individuals, who will guarantee that no one is excluded or left behind. The third part of the national question speaks to the contestations and violence every electoral cycle. 1 year before every election, the economy shuts down as it anticipates the turns and twists of the election. 1 year after the election, the economy is still on a go-slow as markets wrap themselves around the emerging political constellations. This means that in every electoral cycle of 5 years, 2 years are wasted exclusively attending to electoral matters. Fellow Kenyans, the quest to liberate our land was also fueled by our desire to drive hunger, ignorance, disease, and unemployment from our midst. Unless the economy is sustainably expanding to accommodate the youth graduating every year, then what we are doing by removing 2 years is robbing our children of their future. Therefore, as part of the national question, we are called to create an environment where enterprise can thrive by continuously attracting capital into the country. Endless political contestations creates anxiety, akin to some of the things that we are witnessing in our nation today. Truly, I do not believe that is what our founding fathers and the constitutionalists at independence wanted for us. And if we do not change it now, when we have this constitutional moment, this problem will plague our country for years on end. My invitation to our country, therefore, is for us to have an honest conversation with itself, as William has just said. And we must not shy away from taking bold decisions the way our founding fathers did. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to continue by saying that we cannot talk of our independence heroes without mentoring the diaspora fraternity that also supported our liberation struggle, and yet they were not Kenyans. The former Prime Minister of India, the late Jawaharlal Nehru, was one of the very early supporters of our struggle. When the Kapenguria Six were put on trial, he provided part of the legal team that defended them. His rationale was that the liberation struggle anywhere in the colonies was a struggle to liberate the human spirit first and to gain self-rule second. The other diaspora heroes of our liberation included the leadership of the Pan-Africanist movement. And indeed, this week marks the 75th year since the 5th Pan-African Conference was held in Manchester between the 16th to the 21st of October 1945. In attendance were men like W.E.B. Du Bois, who presided over the sessions, men like George Padmore, Kwame Nkrumah, Ras Makonnen, Wallace Johnson, C.L.R. James, and Jomo Kenyatta. This conference pledged to support the liberation movement in Kenya, and indeed they stayed the course. The spirit of Pan-Africanism, imagination, brotherhood without borders, and the craving for an African renaissance is one we need to recapture as we celebrate our diaspora heroes today. We must remember that our founding fathers were Pan-Africanists, and to uphold their vision, we must support the African dream of working together, living together, and building the unity of the African continent. Fellow Kenyans, we must also celebrate today our young people. They are our heroes, and yet we so often forget. As one statesman once said, and I quote, "We do not own this country. We have just borrowed it from our children, as represented by our young people." And if history is not just a path to the past, but a trail into the future, then a spotlight must be shone on our young people this Mashujaa Day. I remind you all that the makers of this nation were actually dominated by young people who worked closely with a few elder statesmen. Many do not know that the Independence Cabinet and the new administration was also dominated by young people. Many also do not realize that the first draft of Sessional Paper number 10 of 1965, which became the blueprint vision of our economy, was written by a 29-year-old technocrat known as Japheth Shamala. These young men were not extraordinary. They became our independence heroes because they made more opportunities out of the little they had been given. Instead of focusing on the hardships of building a new nation from ground up, they focused on the possibilities. The Independence War had taught them that energy flows where attention goes. They had learned from the struggle that what you focus on grows, and the words you utter become flesh. Our young liberators became heroes because they focused on what could be done and not the obstacles that stood in their way. Their attention was on the positive, and the words they uttered about their country were full of optimism. This attitude of positive energy made most of them heroes because they dared to do the impossible. And here is a lesson to our young people today. As I said in my Madaraka Day address, our nation, Kenya, is still a work in progress. It has its good and its bad. It has its ugly, but it also has its sweet. If our attention as a people and a nation always reverts to the bad and the ugly, all energy will flow to the negative, and we will just become a nation of angry, disillusioned people. But the young people who embrace the positive and the possible will emerge heroes and makers of things. So therefore, a good starting point for all our young people is to look for a problem and solve it. And if you solve a problem, heroism and success will naturally follow you. And I have 3 recent examples to illustrate this here in Kenya. The first one, last week on Friday, I invited my cabinet and indeed the entire nation as I unveiled a series of transformative programs and projects undertaken by our young people. The team of over 800 young men and women, drawn from across the Republic, have undertaken seminal programs that include the nationwide airborne geophysical survey, the geospatial project, the cyber project, developed drones, as well as a national security industrial project. These young innovators not only delivered high-quality work, they also did so at a fraction of the said cost. For example, ladies and gentlemen, in respect to the mapping of our national resources under the National Airborne Geophysical Survey, a private firm had quoted to do this at a cost of Kenya shillings 30 billion. But our team of young professionals have programmed to do the job at a cost of Kenya shillings 4 billion. Currently, this project is almost 70% complete, and we look forward next year to launching it. With the completion of this seminal project, the comprehensive geology of our country is now known, and that information will be used to chart a path to prosperity and self-sufficiency for host communities and the wider Kenyan nation. Our young people have similarly completed the mapping of our entire country to the sublocation level, an endeavor that was last undertaken in 1972. Thanks to their efforts, we now have an annotated inventory of all public utilities across the country, all public infrastructure, all schools, both public and private, all hospitals, and all other public utilities, and a description of all physical developments, all the way to the individual home. Mambo ya kuiba mali ya serikali sasa itakuwa ngumu sana. Because of this, the next frontier of e-commerce within our nation will be powered by the national address system that will be rolled out across our nation. The e-commerce trade channel will be serviced with drones made by Kenyans for Kenyans. The second example I want to give is about two engineering students from Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. The two, Michael Mwasikenyi and Ken Geshira, created an automated weeding robot to help farmers eliminate the need for herbicides in their crops. The robot uses artificial intelligence to discriminate between weeds and crops, and the innovation has a robotic arm for weeding in between the crop rows and a plow-like weeding tool that is dragged by the robot as it passes in between the rows of crops to remove inter-row weeds. This innovation emerged winner of the 2020 Imagine Cup, beating teams from across 9 European, Middle Eastern, and African countries. The innovation is scheduled for presentation at the Imagine World Championship in Seattle, Washington State. Added to the many innovations from our young people during the COVID-19 crisis, the third heroic example I wish to mention is that of one Roy Alela, holder of a bachelor's degree in microprocessor technology and instrumentation from the University of Nairobi. This 25-year-old engineer had a strong urge to communicate with his 6-year-old deaf niece. He had a problem to solve, and he did not shy away from it. After many experiments, he finally managed to create a pair of smart gloves that helped him communicate with his deaf niece. These gloves have flex sensors that help the deaf wearer communicate and actually vocalize messages to a mobile phone through Bluetooth. These customs are made to be customized to any client specifications and have a 93% accuracy of vocalizing messages. By solving the problem of his 6-year-old niece, Roy Alela has created a solution that will help thousands of deaf people globally. This innovation has won the Hardware Trailblazer Award by the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. Roy was also the second runner-up for the British Royal Academy of Engineering Leaders in Innovation. With the example, therefore, of the National Security Program, Weeding Robot, and the Smart Glove, it is clear that Kenya has a pool of talented and gifted people. Where those transformative innovations came from, I believe there are many more. All we need do is look. And if our national attention moves to the search for solutions, our natural energy will indeed flow to a positive place. Fellow Kenyans, allow me to end my address today by recording 2 Mashujaa lessons from our founding fathers to our young people. I am compelled to do this because one statement said, if it was not for the elders correcting the mistakes of the young, there would be no state. My intention today is not to correct, but to point our young people in a direction that will make them heroes in their times. The first lesson from our liberation heroes is that it's got to be me. It's got to be me, and it's got to be me. That is, if anything will happen, it all depends on me. If change will happen, do not expect your neighbors to be the one to cause it. You are the one to do it. Answer the summons of change and be the driver of that change. All you need do is show up at the arena. Theodore Roosevelt once said that the man who matters is not the man who stands by the wayside criticizing, saying how things could have been done better. The man who matters is the one in the arena, the man whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, the man who errs and comes short again and again, knowing that even if he fails, at least he fails trying. My call to our young people, therefore, is to get off the wayside of pessimism and get into the arena. If the young veterans of war had not heeded the summons of change, we would not be having this Mashujaa Day or the independence that we enjoy today. The second lesson to our young people from the liberation heroes is this: be prepared to pay the price. And I'm using the word price to mean what you pay in exchange for something. The price of our liberation was high, but there was no doubt that our founding fathers were prepared to pay for it. Some of them paid the price with their own lives, but what they got in exchange is far greater than they could ever have imagined. Borrowing from the young veterans of our liberation, my appeal to our young people is not to be afraid of paying the price. If you have a dream, pay the price and the dream will come to you. And if you have a challenge, pay the price and it will resolve itself. And in saying this, I am inspired by the words of Reverend Frederick Donaldson in a sermon he gave almost 100 years ago. In this sermon, he dreaded an emerging culture of not paying the price. A culture characterized by wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character, commerce without morality, science without humanity, worship without sacrifice, and politics without principle. If indeed our founding fathers were young people when they created Kenya, our young people can found a new Kenya in our lifetime. They have what it takes to create a new wave of heroism if they get into the arena prepared to pay the price of dreaming. On my part as your president, I will continue to accord our youth every opportunity to serve in public service. Indeed, the last crop of chief administrative secretaries that I appointed, the vast majority of appointees were in their 20s and 30s. A continuation of my promise to the youth that my government will empower them and give them a greater voice. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also take this opportunity to commend all the young people that are serving their nation, both at national and county level. Our national response to the coronavirus pandemic was fortified by their immense contributions. I also want to thank our valiant, critical, and essential service providers for keeping Kenya going through this difficult time. I also thank our healthcare workers for their heroism, dedication, and selflessness in the midst of the greatest threat to public health in a century. I thank, too, our law enforcement officers, our military, who are keeping Kenyans safe and orderly. Fellow Kenyans, what then is our lesson from our independence heroes this Mashujaa Day? What our heroes taught us is that it is very easy to lose a country. And as your fourth president, I need to remind you that you will have a fifth, a sixth, and even a 10th president, but you have only one Kenya. This is all we have, and it is imperative that we all must protect it at any cost. So, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot conclude this address without honoring our COVID-19 heroes. In particular, I want to give special mention to our departed health workers, such as Dr. Doreen Lugliki of Nairobi South Hospital, Clifford Mburia of Kitengela Medical Center, Moses Ringera of the University of Nairobi Health Services, Marian Awar of Rachuonyo Hospital, amongst others. Their memory will forever be engraved on our hearts. These brave souls paid the ultimate price, and like our founding fathers, they teach us that heroes are ordinary people who are made extraordinary by unusual circumstances. Similarly, and given the fear-ridden circumstances our COVID-19 heroes found themselves in, they teach us that heroism is not the absence of fear, it is the conquest of fear. On this day, we are called on to embrace the challenges of our times with courage and fortitude, and to seize the constitutional moment to redefine our future and our shared prosperity. And in so doing, we will live to the call of our founding fathers when they secured our independence. I thank you. Mungu awabariki, Mungu alinde, Mungu alinde taifa letu la Kenya. Asanteni sana.
Tusimameni sote kwa wimbo wa taifa tafadhali.
Asante, niombe tuketi kwa kifupi. Na kabla ya wimbo wa taifa, Mheshimiwa Rais, naomba kwa heshima uniruhusu nimwite mwenyekiti wa kitaifa
wa kamati inayoshughulikia masuala ya National Integrated Identity Management System NIMS, Waziri Dr. Fred Matiang'i, atuongoze kwa kipindi kifupi. Waziri, karibu.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Kenya Defense Forces, Your Excellency, the First Lady, Your Excellency, the Deputy President, and Mama Rachel Ruto, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, with your kind indulgence, may I invite the Honorable the Attorney General to join me as we perform this very simple and short ceremony. Your Excellency, about just over 2 years ago, under the National Security Project, you directed that we commence the National Integrated Identity Management System. The focus has been explained several times before in several occasions. It's intended to basically integrate public personal data so that every Kenyan gets a single identity we call a single source of truth, or in Kiswahili, huduma number. Your Excellency, it's my pleasure now on behalf of my colleagues in the Interministerial Committee to report on this historic day that the process is now complete and we have actually developed the huduma number. Your Excellency, today, you and the First Lady will be the first recipients of the Sambo Huduma card, which we hope to be rolled out as soon as the National Assembly completes the process of the appointment of the Data Commissioner as directed by the High Court. Your Excellency, on my own behalf and on behalf of my colleagues in the committee, I would like to invite the Honorable the Attorney General to now hand over the Sambo Huduma card to you and to Her Excellency the First Lady. And thereafter, Your Excellency, I request you to hand out 10 Sambo Huduma cards for validation to 10 individuals and therefore guide us on the rollout that will begin strictly in compliance with the directions of the High Court as soon as the National Assembly is done with the process of the appointment of the Data Commissioner. Your Excellency, the President.
There we have it, huduma number for His Excellency the President and Her Excellency the First Lady. Asante. There we have it. Tuombe sasa Mheshimiwa Rais uweze kupeana ya kwanza kwa Laban Ouru Siro. Tumlete kwa haraka. Laban Evans Amenya Bosire. Alois Mosoti Okero, Sylvester Achuka Mose, Boniface Moseti Oyaro, Evans Guaro Nchoga, Kevin Bwire Mubandi, Lawrence Nyanuga Omambia, Evans Michael Mose, na wa mwisho Henry Lerioka Nyabuto Deri. Asante.
Asanteni, nilikuwa tu nataka niongeze tu mambo machache tafadhali, kama mnaweza mketi dakika moja. Mwajua tulianza kazi ya kuhakikisha kila Mkenya ataweza kupata huduma namba yake ambayo itarahisisha vile Mkenya ataweza kupata huduma za serikali kwa njia rahisi. Na vile nilisema wakati tulikuwa kule Manyani, vijana wetu wamekuwa wakifanya kazi kwa bidii na tayari sasa wamemaliza shughuli zao, na sisi kama serikali tuko tayari kuanza sasa kupatia Wakenya kadi zao za huduma, na ndio waweze kupata hizo huduma zao aidha online kwa njia rahisi. Na ile laini kubwa tulikuwa tunapanga kila wakati katika maofisi ya serikali iishe, badala ya masaa ya kupanga laini mtu akitafuta huduma awe anaendelea na biashara yake, anafanya mambo yake pahali alipo na anapata huduma yake kupitia hiyo kadi. Hiyo na kurahisisha huduma kwa wananchi ndio ilitusababisha tufanye hivyo. Kwa hivyo leo umeona nimewaonesha yangu, na zingine vile tumesema ni sample. Sisi Bwana Spika, tunagojea sasa nyinyi mumalize kazi yenu. Jameni, mumalize kazi yenu na ndio Wakenya waweze kufurahia hali yao. Jameni, au ni namna gani? Wanakemunya. Na ningependa tafadhali wajumbe wote wasimame. Tuko na viongozi kwanza. Unajua kuna order. Kiongozi wa walio wengi kule bungeni, National Assembly, Bwana Kemunya. Kiongozi ya walio wengi katika Senate, Bwana Pogisho. Mdogo wa kiongozi ya walio wengi, Mheshimiwa Jimmy Angwenyi, mtoto wa kwenu. Mheshimiwa James Orengo, kiongozi wa minority. Mheshimiwa Junet, Chief Whip wa minority. Mheshimiwa Ongeri, ndio ambaye I think ndio Public Accounts Chairman, yeye ndio anahakikisha ya kwamba hatuibi pesa. Na hawa wengine nafikiri msalimiane tu, na asante kwa kuja kusherehekea pamoja na sisi. Ningependa pia kuchukua nafasi hii kurecognize viongozi wenzangu kutoka na viongozi wa vyama mbalimbali wenzangu ambao wako hapa. Tuko hapa na ndugu Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, na yeye ndio kiongozi wa chama cha Wiper. Tuko hapa na ndugu Musalia Mudavadi, yeye ndio kiongozi wa ANC. Tuko hapa na ndugu Moses Wetangula, kiongozi wa Ford Kenya. Na hii ndio tunataka jameni. Kenya ni yetu sisi wote. Tupendane, tushirikiane. Kushindana sio uadui. Matusi haijengi. Tutafutiane, tunaweza, we can differ in terms of policies, in terms of programs. That is fine. But we don't have to differ to the point where we insult one another, where we shed blood of our own brothers and sisters because of what we want. No, we are here to serve. We are here to work together. We are here to respect one another. And if we respect each other, you will also be respected. So I want to say I am truly grateful. Nimefurahi sana kuwaona hapa mkija kuungana pamoja nasi na Wakenya wote pahali popote walipo kusherehekea siku hii ya Mashujaa. Na mimi natarajia kuendelea kufanya kazi pamoja nanyi na viongozi wote kwa niaba ya wananchi milioni 45 wa Kenya wazalendo. Nasema Mungu awabariki, Mungu awalinde, na tuendelee na umoja na amani katika taifa letu la Kenya. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Rais. Naomba sote kwa heshima tusimame kwa wimbo wa taifa. Kidogo tafadhali, kidogo.
Sorry. Nimefanya makosa na sasa hiyo mambo ya huduma yangu inaweza kuanguka kwa sababu nimesahau kutaja hapa tuko na kiongozi wa one of the arms of government which is the judiciary, ndio yuko hapa, Chief Justice wetu, tuko pamoja naye hapa. Asante sana Chief Justice. Tuko hapa na Speaker wa the National Assembly Bwana Justin Muturi, uko hapa. Tuko hapa na Speaker wa Senate, na yeye pia tuko naye hapa. Sasa mtapitisha, si ndio? Asante sana.
Wimbo wa taifa.
That was President Uhuru Kenyatta leading the country in the celebration of 57th Mashujaa Day here in the country. The event just ended there at the Gusii Stadium. Doctor, a lot of things came into the play there, and we're happy to know because Kenyans have been asking about the Huduma number, and now it's out, and soon all of us shall be able to go get our cards.
What a day! You see, Philip Chabata, Sean Wesonga, Saxon Vima. It is a great day for me in Kenya. You have heard what the President Uhuru Kenyatta said. My brothers, I have been fighting for this type of language to arrive. Today, we have been opposed. But I want to tell you, 3 things came out for me, Miriam. East or West, the national questions. 3. Did you hear them? The song you heard, the national questions?
Yes.
Constitution is not static.
Yes.
The Constitution is dynamic, and it was made for the people of Kenya. It has to change. There is no shortcut about it. You can go to Jerusalem, you can come back. I can see, oh my God, Reverend Obadiah Musindo himself. Thank you very much. You found when I have removed my flags, we were about to go, but where I am here. All the flags are here. Tell the president that this is my landmark in Nairobi. So thank you very much, Reverend Obadiah Musindo, for coming to our show. We are at the final stage of departing. But it's very good you came in, and therefore we shall say the same things, and we shall repeat.
Reverend, we don't do this. We do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
PF.
Yeah.
Yes. That's okay. Pamberi. Viewers, this station, therefore, has been, the morning we had a topic of on Zimbabwe. Sanctions, with sanctions or without sanctions, what can Zimbabwe do? We don't need to lament. We don't need to talk about these sanctions every day. What can we do as Africans to change the lives of our people, to change the lives of our own people in Zimbabwe? What can Zimbabwe learn? How can Zimbabwe change the system such that Africans like President Uhuru Kenyatta there, we can get him by hand and say, let's go to Zimbabwe. If I'm given that will, he will come. He will come. He wants to know. He's a businessman. Beyond all this, he's a businessman. He needs to invest. Zimbabwe needs to invest. Kenya has a lot of things. I'm summarizing this for Musindo. We have a lot of things that we manufactured in Kenya that can be sold to Zimbabwe without Zimbabweans suffering. Because we don't lack the commodities. But what are the obstacles? The panel, which was so big, very good from Zimbabwe, they have left Abigail, Mapunda, Sukuri, there is Mr. Chabata there, there is Saxon there is Mr. Maganza, and the other people, hundreds and hundreds of people were watching us today, all over the whole world, not only in Zimbabwe. And this is one of the stages where we use to fight any form of sanctions, any form of anybody who talks against Zimbabwe. We now have a platform. We now have a platform from any angle. We can also tune on it and say, what is it that you want? We don't refuse anybody from opposition to come on our platform. Our number is here. Come prepared to be roasted because we have facts. Donald Trump looks at the Zoom. They are watching. The American ambassador in Harare is watching. One of the problems that you people, especially Musundo, you better tell the administration there. You have a black man ambassador. All the time when we have a black ambassador in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, we have trouble. They become part of the local politics instead of being diplomats. We had the Johnny Carsons. You used to see how Johnny Carsons used to fly, to drive to Mashingo, to drive where? To conduct rallies. This one is a very stupid ambassador. It's very stupid. What can he do to me? What? Do I need to go to the United States for what? I've got my education already. And I'm from a civilized country. Not these places. For what fucking the United States? What will he do? He can, what? It is nothing. You have allowed a black person in the name of an ambassador who should be summoned. He should not be summoned to be given a pat on the back. Should be told that stop me. He is part of George Soros' fury. I am looking for SP Moyo. I will get him. He's a general like me. We're all generals. I left with a brigadier general rank. He's now got the rank. I'm a general. And I was there before. I should be given that respect. I will tell him my mind. I don't care about ambassador. What ambassador? You have come to represent, then you become a member of MDC. Hey, Shaman, why are you allowing this? You can't become a member of MDC. Why is it that every wrongdoer in MDC runs to your embassy? Are you Mother Teresa? Are you Mother Teresa? Stupid ambassadors. Very shallow. At times, that's why Mugabe did a blow. That is it. Me, I have no regrets. The other group of people who are causing you problems, Musindo, are Tendai Biti and the Watchman Kube. They are the people who went around looking for sanctions. Zimbabweans should put them on a firing squad and say, why did you look for sanctions? Now today they want to come and enjoy life in Sheraton, in that hotel Rainbow. They should chase them away because they went and looked for sanctions. Wasn't I fighting them every day? I was fighting them. So in a nutshell, today we have proposed, and the panel has discussed quite a lot of things. Let's open up one shop, one stop, where people can fill the forms, know what is in Zimbabwe, what can be imported, what cannot be imported. Let's understand each other. Let there be delegations. Once COVID is down, delegations will come into Kenya and find out what they can take. Open up the talks with the Kenyan banks. Don't lament over sanctions every day, sanctions. You know that if Joe Biden wins the elections in America, then we are going back to square one. It's better you die with Trump.
Don't worry, brother.
I don't know whether your Minister of Foreign Affairs has told you that. If he hasn't got this now, your general is a very sharp guy. He knows it. If Trump loses, these guys are going to bring us a theory which is very difficult for us to manage. Now NGOs will be celebrating.
But Trump renewed the sanctions last year.
My brother, don't worry.
But I know he will win. Americans want
but Trump renewed the sanctions against Zimbabwe sometimes back last year.
No, he renewed not knowingly.
He did know.
But now, if the Obama people come, they will even increase sanctions. So the battle is between now and for us to educate people and prepare ourselves. After November, when you hear that Joe Biden has come to power, Zimbabwe will have more sanctions. Because Joe Biden and Democrats work with NGOs.
Doctor.
Musundo, open up. Now, I open up. Unmute. You're
muted.
So that we hear you.
We can hear him. Go ahead, Philip.
Musindo.
Unmute your phone.
Okay.
You have muted your phone.
Yes.
Yeah, now we can hear.
Now you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, I'm saying you are so right on the Democrats in America, in the sense that the creation of Zidera was done under the supervision of Hillary Clinton. And, one of the reasons why the Democrats were so angry with Zimbabwe is that Hillary Clinton and her allies among the Democrats, they were frustrated and defeated in DRC. They were sponsoring and they were behind the looting of some resources in DRC. Because of the intervention of Zimbabwean military forces under leaders such as S.B. Moyo, their interests were actually crushed, and they did not forgive us for that. But I totally agree with you guys that we need a united front of Africans investing in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe must also open up to the Nigerians and other friendly countries, even Egypt and even other non-Western countries. What are we doing with India? What are we doing with Malaysia? What are we doing? How are we strengthening our relationships with the friendly countries? We must strengthen our relationships as a nation with the friendly nations. We have got people who are supporting us, but it's time to go beyond political support. We need economic cooperation. We need economic action groups in support of Zimbabwe. It's the presidents who are calling against sanctions or the removal of sanctions in Africa must support Zimbabwe in a more practical way by sending business delegation like what you are alluding to. We need Nigerian guys to come and invest. We need Ghanaians to come and invest. And they need our own institutions in Zimbabwe, such as Zimtrade, must actively participate in promoting local-made products to different parts of Africa and other friendly countries. And also, we need people like you, Dr. Matsanga. Thank you for this platform. To actively, we need people like you who must work together with the party, the ZANU-PF party, the government leadership, in fighting or ganging up against these imperialists and so forth and so forth. And the more, as we're discovering more of resources in Zimbabwe, we've discovered that we have some of the largest deposits of gas. We have discovered the earth, ray minerals, and other things like that. The more we are discovering these things, the more these people will be more interested in Zimbabwe. They want to put puppet leaders like Tendai Biti, Chamisa, and so forth, so that these guys will give them access to our natural resources. So what is needed in Zimbabwe also is to deal with issues of people's perceptions. Some of the things that are killing us in this country or fixing us in this country are caused by our own actions and our own thinking as Zimbabweans. Look at how much my brother, Matsanga, Dr. Matsanga, you are so enthusiastic, you are passionate about Zimbabwe, but we've got too many Zimbabweans who don't even care, yet they're occupying critical positions. Even this, the war against sanctions, even the corporate world must actively participate, because at the end of the day, it is them who benefit big time. Because the moment sanctions are removed or the moment we defeat sanctions, there will be a big economic growth, which would definitely benefit the private sector. But guess what? They don't care. So what we also need in Zimbabwe is to completely change the way we think. We need to remove the captured thinking. And the days have come to say to Zimbabweans, can we stop these foreign-controlled, foreign-sponsored opposition parties? If Chamisa was a true opposition leader representing Zimbabwean interests, he should have agreed to come on the negotiating table with the Mnangagwa. But because the guy is taking instructions from somewhere, he takes instructions from G40, he was taking instructions from Mugabe, he was taking also instructions from Americans and so forth and so forth. And so is it. If there is anyone the Americans are trying to push into power, it is Tendai Biti. Yes. And he is actually their preferred choice, not exactly Chamisa. They want people, so Biti is going to use sanctions, people suffering, to try and get into power. Unfortunately, somewhere, I'm a preacher. I believe in the spiritual world. I believe in the power of God. God did not permit people like Biti and people like Chamisa to take over the powers of this country. I also believe that as much as people vote on here physically, in heaven there are also elections. Let me put it that way, where you also elected. That's why we use the word destiny. These guys are not destined to be leaders of this country. He was destined to lead this country. That's why he's in power, and no one can rig elections. Even Chamisa knows this. And no one can read God. In fact, no one can read God. Chamisa is a pastor. He knows the truth. He was not destined to rule this country. And if you check at the behavior of Chamisa, how he took over the MDC leadership, is exactly that's how he wanted to take the leadership of Zimbabwe as a president. So he's a guy who always tried to get his own way. Things must be done according to his own desires and the direction. But unfortunately, on Chamisa. He's actually drifting into political dustbins of this country. Very soon, Chamisa will be in the history books of Zimbabwean politics as a failed politician. People no longer trust him. Look at how many, they were talking about Zimbabwe having crisis. No, they were angry. And you were talking right. You were so right when you said something about the American ambassador. This American ambassador, every time we receive an American ambassador, a black person, we know that they carefully choose or select who will go to Zimbabwe. Face, you've got a black face, but you've got the interest of the white people at your heart. That American ambassador must be confronted by the young people, by everybody in Zimbabwe. We need to reject him. In fact, he has done more damage to the opposition parties because people, they know that it is him representing some hidden interest. That's why they developed the biggest embassy here in Zimbabwe, in Harare, somewhere there in Westgate. That big embassy has some vaults that must be filled with gold, and some vaults that must be filled with the natural resources of this country. And the 2020 was set as a target for them to install their leader, exploit our natural resources, and so forth and so forth. That's why they were so angry. They tried to do demonstrations, do what, and it has thwarted them. But guess what? For us, Zimbabweans, we're not going to wait for the Americans and the Europeans to remove their sanctions. We need production in our farms. Everybody who was given a farm must be productive. You can't be given a farm and fail to be productive. Then what it means, you're putting the country on double sanction. We are under sanctions because of what? We are under sanctions because of land reform. So anyone who has benefited from land reform program must use the land, because the whole nation is suffering because of the land reform program. So those who benefited from the land reform program must use the farms productively, must use the farms for the good of the country. Through maximum production in farms, we can defeat sanctions. That's my brief contribution to this forum.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Viewers, wherever you are in the world watching us, this is a Heroes Day in Kenya, but a very important debate coming up on sanctions. We had that debate. We were interacting between the two and showing the President Uhuru Kenyatta. At the same time, we had a very fruitful discussion at the top 2 hours ago regarding the sanctions, removal of sanctions. With sanctions or without sanctions, what can we do to help Zimbabwe? What can Zimbabwe do to make sure that we fight off the sanctions so that we don't lament, we don't become the book of lamentation. Every day, every year, every generation, we are lamenting sanctions. What can we do to beat the sanctions? That is now the question on the table. On Saturday, African heads of state will be everywhere in Africa. We'll be talking about removal of sanctions on Zimbabwe. President Trump needs support. Trump might have misunderstood the situation of Zimbabwe. You can imagine Trump talks of Zimbabwe, of having an axis of evil. Zimbabwe does not have a weapon of mass destruction. Zimbabwe does not have a nuclear weapon. But someone has brainwashed it. So this type of brainwashing is what when we started talking on these international platforms, picked up by Sky News, by ITN, by BBC, later on, we are going to make sure that we defend and remove this external threat that you are having right now in Zimbabwe. Philip Chabata, I know you are about to fly off. We give you just closing remarks because time across the bridge here, we are also trying to prepare other programs. Your closing remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Matsanga, and welcome, Reverend Msindo.
Yes, at your place.
Yeah. It's Dr. Matsanga's
place. Yes, this is Dr. Matsanga's place.
I can see that is Sharon, the rainbow.
Rainbow towers.
Miriam.
We have refurbished the rooms. We have refurbished the rooms here. You need to visit here, Matsanga. I'll host you. Yes.
Well, thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor, for the opportunity again and the exposure of what is happening. And as most of our fellow contributors have said, Zimbabwe is moving forward. And Zimbabwe will move forward, whether there are sanctions or no sanctions. The only people that have to decide to move forward are Zimbabweans themselves. I think we have heard already highlighted that Zimbabwe is the third richest country in Africa with its natural and mineral resources. We need to find ways of harnessing and using the mineral resources to go forward. There are things that the government of Zimbabwe needs to do, or the people of Zimbabwe needs to do. For example, we have the best president because he's a lawyer. He listens. What we might need him to listen to is that some of the technocrats in the systems, they are rotten. They are derailing progress. And
they're not just rotten, my brother, they are captured.
Yeah, they're captured. I don't know, because you ask me who captured them, I can't point now.
No, George Soros.
Yeah, George Soros.
Yes.
But he is only. But we know that George Soros is only a man, but there is no day that will not arrive. In Shona, they say,
George Soros, just as every African country, is now captured. Yeah. Recently, I saw the president of Malawi there, a captured man walking on uncaptured people. You know,
hey, that's my friend. That's my friend. You.
For me, Chakwera cannot impress me. He was in Kenya and I refused to even say hi to him. It's not worth it. He's captured by George Soros. And when you see him crossing over there, I hope you, Msindo, Shaman, you better tell, you know what I mean. Be careful.
I would be interested to sit down with. I can see. I would be interested.
Too many times there, you will be in trouble.
I would be interested to know much on Chakwera because I can sit down with Chakwera, and we can do. But I leave that to the Malawian people.
Yeah, I know.
However,
don't worry about it. I know. There is no African leader whom I don't know the background. Well, I know.
So what then what the president needs to do is, we are grateful that he has put up this one-stop investment center, which is ZIDA, Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency. But what he also needs on that agency are right people, the right personnel, so that the ease of doing business, like we are talking about, which is happening now in Rwanda, can happen also in Zimbabwe. It doesn't have to be just a terminology of doing easy business, doing easy in business, but it has to be practical. The turnaround time has to be the right one. Anything more than 48 hours is too much for investors. So their forms need to be reduced. There are too many forms that people are going through right now. As I travel around the globe, and
they call it Mr. Chabata, Philip Chabata. Let me help you, because I got a doctorate when you are still fighting in the bush. So, let me help you. They are called red tape.
Yeah, too much red tape.
Too much red tape. Musindo is a professor of divinity. Red tape created a slow pace in the kingdom of God. So, let's remove the red tape.
But the president is doing very well
because I want Musindo to hear the voice of Miriam, who is in the general headquarters. That is the television. You can see it demands the whole world. not these small things of yours. That is what we have, Mr. Musindo.
Yes. So what we need from our friends in Africa.
And we dedicate, we don't talk. Forget about this man called Pancake Moyo. He can't speak here. If he writes one word from Kenya here, he now has got a number from South Africa which writes from here. We have told him not to write anything from here. We shall just... There is a likelihood of him being brought there by like a tomatoes, and can I bring him like a tomatoes and throw him there? I can throw him at Harare International Airport. Like a tomatoes. You see, when you do bad things about your friend, you could also find yourself in chaos. He did a lot of bad things about me. But now he's in the same country in exile. We can throw him like a tomatoes to Harare. But
they are growing.
Look at us. We are human beings. We are not animals. And we believe in God. Some of us grew up in a Christian home, which has a toilet. And we respect toilets. People who grew up in bad places like Moyo are the ones who can create a problem. So please look at the way Moyo used to harass you, harass everybody. But today he's also the same identity. He's holding a refugee identity card like a Matang. Why did you harass another refugee? Why? And you deny me to come to Zimbabwe to eat food. Was I a refugee should never be denied to eat food?
Yeah. No, but doctor.
Have you seen how things pay back? So you people, when you are dealing in power, listen to Reverend like a Musindo. Look at that man. We have suffered together. We have a lot. We have shared what we had. But we have never betrayed our cause.
Yes.
And
doctor, thank you so much.
Yes,
I have never, for 1 minute, I have never failed to respect Emerson Mnangagwa.
That I can testify.
Even during Mugabe's government, the only person I continue talking to is Emerson.
Yeah, he's a great man.
And I'm happy. I have no regrets. You can go to hell and I don't know whether there's a waiting room for people before we are set. If there is a waiting room, Reverend, tell Changarai to sit not near me. I'm not bothered. Yes, tell them to sit there. I sit while I'm waiting for my fire. The fire.
I said there is a room for you here. You need to fly to Zimbabwe for 2 days.
First of all, let's conclude this show.
Yes,
and thank you so much. We want to return to Miriam.
Before
Miriam,
you turn to me,
want to fire the Reverend a few questions.
Well, for the interest of time, but Philip was making his final remarks. I don't know if he's done. And I saw another one of our panelists there, Kadonzo, who raised their hand. So perhaps after Philip...
Kadonzo is in the same hotel with...
Okay. So, Philip, are you done? Did you conclude?
He wants to
let me finish.
Let Philip finish his thoughts. He was concluding, and then we can go to Kadonzo.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Dr. Matanga, the other thing that we would want to ask from our African friends is that Africa is very rich. If we can have money that is in people's bedrooms come into business and into our banks, we'll be very grateful. And so this will help Zimbabwe to move forward. Especially the Zimbabwean community, we ask our Indian friends that they need to bank that money in banks. And also we would want to ask our own Zimbabwean friends, black friends, that they need to put money in the banks. But above all, we ask our banks not to steal money from these bankers when people bank their money. If we do that, Zimbabwe will move forward, and we can build a great nation, and we can succeed. And we really would want to see our leaders like you, Dr. Matsanga, with your Jonathan Moyo there, you sit down with him and explain to him that you see what goes around comes around. We need more peace now in Africa, in our African brothers. Yes. Talking together, sitting down and reconciling. We want you, our elders, to start building us into reconciliation instead of finishing each other.
No, we are not.
With that, I submit. With that, I submit to you and say thank you so much for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. We can see Mr. Condonzo.
Condonzo, yes, he can come in and
can you speak now? The floor is yours.
And introduce yourself first.
I'm Mr. Condonzo.
Yes.
I just wanted to say the only way Zimbabwe can move forward is if people are united. Unity is key. The problem that we're having now is polarization, where we have got other people that are undoing the government's effort. To be specific, is the opposition. So what we need to do is to be united as a people, united as a country. That's when we can move forward. For us to bust these sanctions, we need to speak with one voice. That's why I would want to thank SADC. I would want to thank the AU for speaking with one voice against these sanctions. But what we need to do now is to love ourselves as a people and also echo these sentiments. And also, we've got another twin evil that is related to sanctions. That's corruption. That was being talked about by Mr. Tabata of people that are rotten. We need to heed the call of the president, by the president, to fight corruption. Corruption is deadly. And there's some of the reason why we are in this quagmire of epic proportion is because of corruption. So what we need to do is to heed the call and follow the footsteps of the president in fighting corruption. That way we can move forward and resuscitate our economy as Zimbabwe. That's my short submission.
Okay, thank you very much. We have our own Wesonga Miriam, and then we hand it over back to Miriam to make our her closing remarks and send us home peacefully. Miriam will be coming in Musindo and prepare room for Miriam in the Rainbow Hotel.
Send her early.
She will be sent as an advance party.
No.
All right, Daniel, can you come in?
My only asset I have.
Daniel, come on. What are your final remarks?
Wesonga.
Yes, thank you, Miriam. And of course, we've had a very, very productive discussion. And from us here in Kenya, we have been always on the side with Zimbabwe against sanctions being lifted. But as we see, is that what we see right now is that these sanctions have taken time to be taken off from the Zimbabweans. And of course, they have had their worst repercussions in terms of derailing back the economy of Zimbabwe. And I believe as together, I mean, the same thought with the various panelists who have spoken from Zimbabwe, that it is a high time now for Zimbabweans and the country itself to go back to the drawing board and be able to reevaluate itself and come up with policies that will ensure that homegrown activities can be able to yield at least something to put bread on the tables of various Zimbabweans in the country. And also from my end, I believe it will also be prudent for Zimbabwe to also learn from countries which in a particular point in time had been bedeviled by sanctions like Japan, like China, and North Korea. You realize that some of these countries are mainly like North Korea, depended on exporting their workforce in the construction industry, in various IT and various other sectors of the economy, to be able to go out in friendly countries, work there, and be able to bring revenue back at home. So those are just some of the few loopholes that they can be able to use and dodge these sanctions that have been hurtling the economy of the country for quite some time. But finally, from here in Kenya, we are still with you guys. We stand with Zimbabwe as Africans we believe that some of these sanctions were unfairly imposed on the people of Zimbabwe, who continue to suffer long years after the disagreement that whichever countries ahead with the leadership of Zimbabwe then were having. So to us, we believe that the sanctions should be removed. But before they're removed, let Zimbabweans and the leadership of the country explore other ways to keep the economy afloat.
Oh, thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Before you come in to close the topic, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you, all the participants from 11 o'clock, those who have gone home, Amai, Abigail, Saxon, Magwaza, Sukuro, all of those who have taken part, and millions across the continents of Africa, America, Europe, who are watching, and especially Kenyans. You saw the figures went so high because President Uhuru Kenyatta was giving his speech, and we had to switch on and switch back, switch on, but still the figures remain constant. We want to thank all of you. We want to thank everybody who has a contribution. Every Tuesday we have a topic, diplomatic leaks. And this diplomatic leaks is here. And we also have music. We also have our radio station, which will soon be coming up to discuss many other things, where we do live from even Harare. Applications will be given to you, and you can always do it from Harare. We want to thank you. We want to help the government of Zimbabwe to get out of this mess, the mess that was created by your own people. But above all, we want to unite, as President Uhuru Kenyatta said, a borderless nation. A borderless nation. His Excellency said today, a borderless nation, a brother from the border. That's what he said. We want our brothers from the border to be one nation. He doesn't want borders. He wants a Pan-African movement, a Pan-African united Africa, a united Africa that does not have the G40 who sit and work out things from Johannesburg, who don't have G40, who sit and work out things from Nairobi, who doesn't sit and work things from Lilongwe. You have problems around that region. We want to help you to get rid of some of these malcontents that have sprung around your region, that are splitting the ANC, that are seeking support from ANC to come and disorganize Zimbabwe. We are aware of them, we know them, and we are not shy of telling you the truth. What can they do? Nothing. Nothing. You see the life that you wanted others to be in? I have been in this life for 36 years, Mr. Musunda. Reverend, have you seen they have joined me to conclude, to finish my other 20 years? So life, when you are in power, treat others well. Because you never know where you will find them. That is the reconciliation. For Chivata, on the question of reconciliation, don't worry. I reconciled a long time ago. I forgave everybody. I forgave everybody. And my focus is a united, prosperous, a reconciliatory of consensus. Musindo, the politics that Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta are playing in Kenya today, believe me or not, God is watching. Is the best politics. Kenya he has just said it. He finished it today. Just now. He said he needs a consensus, a national discussion, not competitive. I have to become a president. You remember the Mason Musundo who used to say, I, Morgan Changarai. I am the one. Besije. another one in Akros. My country, messages, I, Dr. Kiza Besika, I said, me when I see somebody saying I go away. So I want to thank you, Miriam. We have taken plenty of our time, your time, but with the beautiful voice, you can send us home. And don't forget, tonight at 8 p.m. East African Standard Time, I will be presenting the editor's memo. And the editor's memo is a single-handedly me. I will be delivering, analyzing what the President Uhuru Kenyatta said on BBI. If you have any questions all over the whole world, wherever you want, test my political science knowledge, and you will get it at 8 p.m. East African Standard Time. Thank you very much. From Miriam back to the general headquarters. I will be in the mobile unit of the Punchline Africa Television. This is the stationary. I will be in the mobile unit on the road where I will be broadcasting from. I am on my way to Tanzania to watch, to see the elections, to see how they have conducted themselves, to see President Magufuli win with his landslide, to see the Tanzania rising under the spirit of Nyerere. I will be there starting from next Thursday, this Thursday. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless everybody. Back to you in the studio, Miriam. Thank you.
Doctor, thank you so much. That is Dr. David Matanga, together with our panel guests from Zimbabwe and even from Kenya here. We had a host of so many people today, and others left the conversation a bit earlier. Abigail Saxon, Professor Onyari, and of course we just heard from Reverend Musindo there, and we also heard from Kadonzo, as well as Mr. Maganza there, and Philip as well. So thank you so much. One of the comments here from our viewers, Miyakoa Chimijake, said, people of Zimbabwe must work the land and the minerals and work hard. Let's stop blaming the white people. It's time to work and be independent. Africa are still not independent. I think that's what he meant to say. For how long are we going to depend on Westerners to tell us of what to do? And I think during this conversation, what has come out today is that Zimbabweans can actually do the works themselves. And the solutions they're looking for out there is within Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe, it's time perhaps to improve on their relationships with other friendly countries so that Zimbabwe can jumpstart its economy. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Diplomatic Leaks. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and on behalf of everybody else who has participated on this show today, bye-bye for now, and we'll see you here tomorrow.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.